And welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, iHeartRadio, and to all our friends in St. Helens, Oregon, listening to us on AM 1600 KOHI. Nice having you back with us, X Zone KOHI. We missed you guys. My guest this hour, X Zone Nation, is Brandon Massullo. He is a clinical therapist, parapsychologist, and author residing in Northeast Ohio. Fascinated by paranormal phenomena for more than 20 years, Brandon has been a participant in and featured speaker at numerous paranormal forums and events. He studied psychology and parapsychology at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. His research has been cited in numerous parapsychological journals, articles, and mainstream books. His website, hauntedtheories.com. And Brandon, welcome to the X Zone.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Rob.
So what was it in the life of Brandon Massullo that piqued the interest in the paranormal?
Well, unfortunately, I don't have a cool personal experience or that most people who get into the field actually have. Mm-hmm. I was over a friend's house when I was probably, I think, in 8th grade, maybe freshman in high school, and his house was supposedly haunted. I didn't see anything, but one of my friends woke up in the middle of the night and had seen an apparition, and he started asking questions like, what are ghosts? Are they real? And I really didn't know the answers to that. So I actually went to the library. Back then, the internet wasn't really that. There wasn't anything on the internet, really. Mm-hmm. So I had to go to the library. I picked up some books on parapsychology, started reading, went through numerous parapsychological books. And then next thing you know, I'm in college studying psychology. And then I get my clinical degree. And then blink of an eye, I'm in Scotland studying parapsychology. Wow. And that's where I did my research. And, just became more and more interested in it the longer I was around it. And then came back to the States and wrote the book. So that's it in a nutshell. I always tell people I wish I had some sort of cool, like I grew up in a haunted house and had all these ghosts around me type thing. But unfortunately, I'm kind of boring in that way.
You have graduate degrees, like you said, in research and clinical psychology. How does that help you with your studying the paranormal?
I actually think it's a really, really helpful part. I think that because sometimes when you think of not everyone knows exactly what parapsychologists do, mm-hmm. but there is a little bit of assessing people when you're talking about paranormal experiences and anything that's sort of outside the realm of normal. So I think the clinical part really helps me sort of gauge what's going on with the person. With my undergraduate degree in psychology, I actually worked in the mental health field, and I still do work in the mental health field. I've conducted, I think I counted one time, somewhere around 5,000 evaluations, behavioral health consultations.
Right.
So I've got that aspect of things down, and I worked in emergency rooms, medical floors. So I've kind of got a good idea of ruling out mental illness when it comes to these things. And then the parapsychology part. And another thing with clinical psychology is just learning how to interview people, letting people talk, empathetic listening. Mm-hmm. All that stuff is really important when you do clinical work. And then the parapsychology part of things. My degree is actually in research, psychological research methods. So I didn't really just study all parapsychology. We studied how to conduct experiments, statistical analysis, those types of things with a specialization in parapsychology. Because really with parapsychology, you want to make sure you know how to conduct these type of experiments.
Right.
And that's why my degree was actually in psychological research methods. So I have a little bit of the knowledge of the history of parapsychology, psi, ESP, a little bit of the clinical, and then a lot of the research part of things. So I think all those things come together, and it helps me take a level-headed approach towards ghostly phenomenon and paranormal phenomenon.
While studying parapsychology at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, you conducted research at one of Scotland's most haunted locations, and that is Mary King's Close. Can you tell us about the location and what your research entailed?
Yeah, Mary King's Close is on Edinburgh's Royal Mile. It's been featured on a lot of television shows, Ghost Hunters International, Most Haunted, Cities of the Underworld.
Right.
It's actually it's like underground apartments and businesses that was used during the 1600s. So Mary King's Close, it's kind of shrouded in myths and urban legends. Supposedly, many people were murdered down there. They say that when people had the plague, they were actually walled up in Mary King's Close, but I'm not sure how much of that is actually true. But there is a lot of haunt type phenomenon at Mary King's Close. What I did my research on over there was something called environmental sensitivity, and that basically says what I was really looking at was why some people are more prone to ghostly experiences. And I found out through doing some research on other avenues and reading some journal articles that there's an increased probability of having ghostly encounters. Doesn't really have to do with this psychic ability that a lot of people talk about, but it's something as simple as and concrete as sort of our ability to taste, touch, and smell. And that's where environmental sensitivity comes into it. So I just want to be clear, environmental sensitivity is not psychic sensitivity, like Sylvia Browne and John Edwards and all that, or Chip Coffey. Those who are environmentally sensitive are kind of just affected by the environment to a higher degree than the normal population. So me and you, we experience the world differently.
Sure.
You know, me and my wife experience the world differently. When I walk into Sherwin-Williams, I see 4 colors of paint. She sees about 400 colors of paint because she knows white, egg white, whatever. So that's true not only for sight or color perception, but for smell, taste. And sometimes some people are better at knowing what's going on in the atmosphere, barometric pressure, humidity. Some people actually respond to electricity in the air or have a electromagnetic sensitivity. So these people were having a lot more paranormal experiences, and that's really what my research really focused on over there. So it was kind of a cool situation. Well, we found that kind of looking at the reasons of why these people have more paranormal experiences, why are they more prone to it? Is there certain conditions that correlate to it? And that paper is free online. It's called Environmental Sensitivity and Paranormal Experiences. You could always look it up if you're ever interested in it. And usually people who are environmentally sensitive have a lot of migraines, a lot of allergies, fibromyalgia, those types of environmental illnesses.
Fascinating. So let me ask you this. Are ghosts real?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question, isn't it? I think that I guess it depends on what your definition of a ghost is.
Well, the definition of the apparition that people see, communication with the dead, waking up in the middle of the night and seeing a portion of a person floating in your bedroom, the typical stuff.
Yeah. So an apparition, to me, an apparition is like a ghost-like image. So you can have an apparition and it could be of a person who's still alive.
Right.
There's crisis apparitions that happen all the time. Your wife is in a car accident and you're sitting at home and you have a vision of her just standing in front of you with blood coming down her face. But then you learn she was in a car accident at the same time. So that's sort of an apparition in that way. I believe that paranormal phenomenon do occur. I think that there's different levels of it. I look at things in terms of, are there earthbound spirits that are coming down and communicating with us who are trapped here and can't move on? I don't know the answer to that one because it's tough for me to at least look at it from a research standpoint and sort of validate things like that.
Yeah.
I look at things more like, could the environment hold events like telepathic messages, or could there be something in the environment, whether it's consciousness, that people can sometimes tap into? I think a lot of the paranormal phenomenon that exists out there is sort of this ability of sometimes people of just getting a snapshot or picking up on something that's in the atmosphere. And I think a lot of it has to do with, like I talked about, crisis apparitions, telepathy. The psi hypothesis is a big one in parapsychology, which a lot of the parapsychologists believe could be happening when it comes to apparitions. So if I define ghosts as a ghost-like image, I could have a number of ways of describing what that is.
All right, I have to ask you to hold on. We've got to take our break.
Oh, sure.
Exo Nation, our guest this hour is Brandon Massullo, and his website is www.hauntedtheories.com. And we'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. Brandon Massullo is our special guest this hour. His website is www.hauntedtheories.com. And we're talking to Brandon about his new book entitled The Ghost Studies, New Perspectives on the Origins of Paranormal Experiences. And once again, his website is hauntedtheories.com. Is it possible, Brandon, based on the research that you have done, that the paranormal may not be paranormal at all, but part of normality, but in a section of normality that we have yet to discover?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think a lot of people, when you say discover, I think a lot of people have been talking about like things like psi, like telepathy and ESP. Sure. But you're right. No one's been able to really prove it exists or validate it or, scientifically come to a conclusion 100% that it's out there fact-wise. But I think that those types of things really play a huge part in paranormal phenomenon. The tricky thing is with the scientific method is, especially when it comes to ghostly encounters, these encounters are erratic, sporadic, poorly documented, unable to happen on a consistent basis, which is basically everything that the scientific method hates. So studying these types of things that are random, happen whenever, even sometimes out of our conscious ability, it's tough to put someone in a lab or in a room and have them reliably do that. So I think that's where, it becomes challenging to validate these things. So you go with a lot of firsthand experiences or reports. But I just watched. It was probably a couple months ago. I watched a presentation, and one of the presenters actually had a video on, and it was actually quoting the president of the American Statistical Association, Jessica Utz. And one of the things that she said was, and this is, I think I'm getting this quote pretty right, is that the evidence for psi is quite strong statistically and would be widely accepted if it was related to something mundane. So to me, that's a big, hey, this is out there. Why isn't this becoming more of a normal as opposed to an abnormal when you have the president of the American Society for Statistics saying something like that?
Well, why should it be? If she's just giving statistical analysis instead of proof, why should anybody take it serious?
Well, the statistical analysis is a series. I mean, they do meta-analysis of experiments on psi, remote viewing, ESP. So with the meta-analysis, they're combining 50, 60 studies and seeing if they're significant.
But you see, John Q. Public isn't interested in that. John Q. Public wants to see the facts. They want to see the ghosts. They want to see the actual paranormal event occurring. They want to see the UFO. They want to see the Bigfoot. They're not interested in facts and figures. They want proof, like the old lady in the Wendy's commercial. Where's the beef?
That's right. Yeah, and I would argue this not just John Q. Public. A lot of mainstream society wants a personal experience or some sort of validation through something like a personal experience to say it's proof. Because when you read something, it doesn't really resonate with you until something happens to you.
I've been doing the show for 28 years this year. 5 nights a week, 4 hours a night. Let's see, that's 20 guests a week. And whether it's the UFO phenomenon, Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, lake monsters, ancient mysteries, ghosts, hauntings, demonic possession, nothing has changed over 20 years, 28 years. There has been no evidence brought forward in any of these different venues to substantiate the claims being made by the people who are just involved in this beyond belief. People say, Rob, if you don't believe, why are you doing your show? It's very simple. I want to believe. And If there is someone out there or something out there with the proof that is required to give credit to the claims, I want to find it.
I guess I would respond with, what would convince you? Like, what evidence do you need? Because obviously you said statistics and
Yeah.
meta-analysis, those things aren't going to convince you. What's going to convince you?
Well, it's very simple. If there are claims of UFOs, I want to see a real UFO. You know, like, why don't they land? Why don't they make themselves known? Why is it only a select percentage of the population that actually see these things? The same thing goes for Bigfoot. Why haven't we found a Bigfoot corpse anywhere? When we talk about lake monsters, we have the most, if we can find a Russian sub beneath the ocean, why can't we find Loch Ness Monster? If there are ghosts, why can't we get the physical evidence to prove their existence? With modern technology, if we can read a watch from a satellite orbiting Earth, why can't we find a ghost? Why can't we find a UFO? Why can't we get the proof that will satisfy the non-believers? There's either one of two answers. They exist or they don't. And I want to find out which one it is.
I guess I would say, well, you think that the technology is, because I don't know anything about, I'll be honest with you, I don't know much about UFOs, Bigfoots, or lake monsters, unfortunately, or demons. But you know, when it comes to hauntings and ghosts, obviously, it sounds like you rely heavily on what technology tells you.
Well, I believe in evidence. As a former police investigator, I rely on evidence. I rely on the facts. Hearsay evidence to me means very little unless it's supported by evidence. If I see, when I was working on the force, if somebody had the heck beat out of them and they said John Q did it, well, then I know, you bring in John Q and you do the questioning. And if he did do it, he was charged. Plain and simple. But when it comes to the paranormal, it seems like it's a little social club. People go out chasing ghosts, hunting ghosts. You've got all these wacko TV shows out there doing all this so-called reality TV that is anything but real. It's fulfilling a need in society at this point because there's a lot of negativity. And if people, and this is my opinion, if people can claim that ghosts are real, that life surpasses death, it gives them something to hope for. It's just like people who go to psychics and shell out good money for a bunch of hocus pocus.
Yeah.
It's a placebo effect. Like with over 13,000 ghost groups in the United States. 1,500 groups just in South LA alone. Why hasn't there been the proof? How come nobody's got the proof that this is real? And then my question to them is, all right, you prove that ghosts are real. What next? We don't know.
Yeah.
So what are you doing it for?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess you can say they're spinning their wheels to some degree. When you look at things, when you take it sounds like you're doing a lot of taking a step back and looking at things like on a macro level. A lot of things. Let me ask this.
Sure.
Do you believe in love? Do you love somebody?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Prove to me that love exists.
Are you a father?
No.
Well, let me tell you something, young man. I've got 6 children, 10 grandchildren. And the moment I was told by my wife that she was having a little one, that little one started to be loved. When I first held my daughter, love was there. I could see the love. I could feel the love. When she comes to me and says, "Daddy, I love you," I can see that love.
Yeah. But here's what I'm saying. That's your subjective experience. You could see it, you could feel it.
Yes.
But there's no evidence.
Oh, sure there is. Sure there is. My daughter is a living person. We're not talking about a spook that can't be seen or is invisible and only seen by certain people.
I'm not talking about your daughter. I'm talking about the feeling of love.
So how does this relate
The
to the
actual
feeling of a
feeling.
paranormal experience?
Well, because how you described love
Mm-hmm.
was a subjective. When I saw her, I
Yeah,
knew it.
yeah.
I felt it. When people have paranormal experiences, it's the same thing that you described love.
But you
I,
see,
f-
my
I
daughter is,
felt something. It was around me. I had a sense of belonging, whatever, a sense of a
but there's a
presence.
big difference as far as I'm concerned when you're talking about loving a child or loving another person or even disliking a person than an imaginary or something that cannot be seen, felt, heard, that something that is just in that person's mind, which brings me to the next point. How do we know that the manifestation of any ghost or apparition is not within the mind of the person and has no actual ties to reality?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's some cases where you can't. There's no way to rule
Yeah.
that out, But when I want to clarify that when I talk about love,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about that you can't love another person. I'm saying that proving something like a feeling, like I don't know if it's I guess love would be a feeling.
All right,
A
stand by. We've got
feeling.
to come back on the other side of this break. X Zone Nation. My guest this hour is Brandon Massullo. I'm sorry, Brandon. His website is hauntedtheories.com, and we'll be back after this break. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. Brandon Massullo is our guest this hour. www.hauntedtheories.com. There's so much controversy about the paranormal these days because of all the different TV shows that are on, the different groups that are out there, chasing around after ghosts. And the paranormal, I think, has suffered a big blow because it's turned into a business instead of anything else.
Yeah, I would agree 100%.
Yeah.
And I think when you watch these when you watch TV shows, some of them can be very entertaining,
Mm-hmm.
and I think a lot of them do play a pretty good role in that they provide support for people who might be going through, what they perceive to be a paranormal experience or something like that. But
Right.
more or less, it has become somewhat overwhelming that, people are charging $200-$300 to these paranormal enthusiasts to come research a house for
Yeah.
4 hours or something like that. Or, these hotels, or we're the most haunted hotel here, most haunted hotel there. There's no real way to say what's the most haunted place. So it becomes a little disheartening. And even the TV shows are just formulas over and over and again. And sometimes they just stress the EVPs and the machines that make noises.
Yeah.
Which, when you do actual research in a haunted locations, it's a lot different than what you see on TV. It's a lot more boring, that's for sure. But yeah, I would agree that I think when things become more business, then it takes away a little bit of
Credibility.
credibility. Yeah, I was going to say seriousness, but credibility is a better word.
Let me ask
credibility of the field.
Let me ask you this. You're a professional. Why would somebody go to a ghost hunter instead of seeking professional help from a person like yourself if they have had a paranormal experience that is bothering them?
I wish I knew the answer to that. I think it's easier. If you type in something on the internet, it goes right to your local ghost hunters. And I think that a lot of them have on their websites this notion of being extremely professional. And maybe some of them are. I don't know. I mean, you mentioned like 1,300 in LA alone.
1,500 in southern LA. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize there were that many of them. But I think it's just ease, and they just type something in. It comes to their local ones. They just send an email out to them. Next thing you know, they're at their door.
But once again,
finding me is a lot more challenging probably than that.
But you've gone through university. You've done your degrees. You know what you're talking about. You are responsible to those that seek your help, right? You have ethics that have to be followed.
Yes.
You're a professional. And I think what really upsets me the most is that you have people who are going to these unqualified people who are then in turn giving these people psychological help without knowing what damages they could be doing to these people.
Yeah, yeah. And the worst is when, especially if you end up in someone's home who is not, mentally stable, and you tell them there's ghosts or demons in their house. Obviously, you're going to exacerbate those symptoms pretty intensely, and you're going to, and you might validate some delusions that they have, and then they say, well, I don't need my medications because there actually are demons in my house telling me to do this. And I think that a lot of these people, they have passion, and they have this idea that they're helping people, but you could really do a lot of damage. And I think that you have to pump the brakes anytime you deal with somebody, especially in their home, when it comes to talking about demons or ghosts or anything like that. And unfortunately, the TV shows, there's no one on there that's a professional. They don't ever say anything like, you should maybe they do, you should consult a professional or something.
I haven't
like
seen
that.
any.
Yeah.
Listen, you introduced two very interesting theories to account for ghostly encounters. Can you tell us about the one that you call spontaneous apparitional trace theory, or SAT, or ghostly ingredients theory?
Yeah. So in the book, there's a couple of theories that I kind of developed over the last 10 years or so, and really what the ghostly ingredients theory says is that spontaneous ghostly encounters can sometimes are more or less, in a way, kind of like telepathy in disguise. And when I say that, I mean there's a lot of complex processes that are happening when these paranormal phenomena are occurring. And sometimes these processes, or a lot of these processes, are actually a combination of psychological processes, human bioenergetic processes, and the external environmental atmosphere. And it's a combination of these three which kind of lead to a genuine, spontaneous paranormal experience. So, I know we don't have a lot of time to go over these things, but in the book I kind of discuss a little bit about, and I give some case examples of what really happens what's the catalyst to a lot of these spontaneous or these crisis apparitions and deathbed visions. And I kind of break it down as best I can. And I also provide a lot of research about how telepathy might involve, or how it might work, and things like that. Spontaneous apparitional trace theory, or SAT, is basically my theory on what happens with residual hauntings. And it's kind of a mix of imprint theory and telepathy, more or less, that it's not a tragedy that's burned into the environment, but more like a lingering telepathic message that some people pick up on. So what I do is I kind of take these crisis apparitions, and I kind of take hauntings. I give some examples, and then I go over what the research out there really says on this, and then I kind of give some of my thoughts on it. A lot of books will give you scary ghost stories, and then they just sort of leave you there. In this book, I go over maybe some possible explanations for it. And again, a lot of sometimes the explanation could be something that has to do with something that's not paranormal. It could be reality testing deficits. It could be mental illness. It could be this. It could be that. So I think it's important to, when you have an encounter, to look at all the possible ways of what's going on. I try to leave out this idea that it's an earthbound spirit coming back and communicating with us, because I think I'll leave that to other people who want to go down that road. And I sort of focus more on the parapsychological things, the psi hypothesis that are going on.
What role does energy, electricity, and EMF meters play in ghostly encounters?
Oh, gosh. There depends on who you ask, right?
I'm asking you, my friend.
Yeah. When it comes to these types of things, I think that the EMF meters have become so commonplace now that stepping away from electromagnetic fields is a challenging thing to do when it comes to ghostly encounters. I mean, we're sort of surrounded by electrical and magnetic fields, from toasters to TV lamps to TVs. So since we're constantly bombarded with these things, there's a lot of research out there that says that EMFs can actually cause ghostly experiences. In other words, it's a natural explanation for a paranormal
Yeah.
event. Michael Persinger did a lot of research on this,
Mm-hmm.
where he zapped people with EMFs. I'm more technical than that, but he zapped people with EMFs, and then they had sense of a presence, hallucination, those type of experiences. So that's a common thing that could happen if I won't say common, but it could
Mm-hmm.
happen if magnetic fields could manipulate us in that way. There's the other side of the coin, is that, ghosts use the energy to manipulate and manifest themselves. So I think electricity, EMFs, EMF meters, there's a correlation between this, and there's research out there that says places that are magnetically remarkable in some way, there's more paranormal phenomenon happening there. Now, is that because it's a natural cause to it, or is that related to the paranormal? I think it's hard to parse those things out. So I go over a lot of cases in the book, and I try to parse it out as best I can. And I think a lot of what I do in the book is I just try to give a lot of education on what is electricity, what are EMF meters, what are they designed to do, what are they not designed to do, and then I kind of go over a little bit more about how the atmosphere plays a role in everything we basically do, how
Mm-hmm.
it's important for us for living. We need magnetic fields. We got to have them to survive. If we don't have them, then we're going to have some problems.
Brandon, stand by. You and I have to take our final break for this hour.
Okay.
Nation, Brandon Massullo is our special guest. www.hauntedtheories.com. And we're talking about his new book, The Ghost Studies, New Perspectives on the Origins of Paranormal Experiences. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. No, that's not the kind of aliens that Trump is talking about, Craig. No. Nation, my guest this hour is Brandon Massullo. He is the author of The Ghost Studies, New Perspectives on the Origins of Paranormal Experiences, and his website is www.hauntedtheories.com. Here's a question for you. It seems that there's a correlation between the increase in paranormal activity being reported and the increase in cell towers that have been put up. Has anyone been able to do a study to confirm this?
No, I didn't even know there was a correlation with that. That's the first I've ever heard of that, Rob. I apologize. Yeah, I don't.
No need to apologize. No need to apologize.
Yeah.
I found it rather astounding, and yet when we did a fast survey with the cases that we were aware of, it's astounding. You should check it out, my friend.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that.
Because we know that microwaves and EMFs can cause hallucinations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you look at it in an actual house, the EMF fields have to be pretty complex, pretty fluctuating. They have to be, I guess, erratic and unique in that way. But they do happen between 10 milligauss and 40 milligauss, which is something we come across on a pretty daily basis. So if the more cell towers that go up, the more, like you said, there are more fields there are in the environment, the more possibilities of something like that happening. I guess I can see that.
Let me ask you something. When investigators are using the EMF meters, do they take into consideration that their own bodies are emitting EMFs? And that if they get excited, they start emitting a higher field?
The EMFs that the people buy, they don't really look into them at all. Some EMFs are single axis, some are triple axis, some are frequency weighted, some are not frequency weighted. So you don't really know what you're measuring, I'll be honest with you. You just sort of have a basic idea. Some of them are sensitive enough to pick up human electrical fields, if you want to say it like that.
Right.
So I don't think a lot of them do know that. I think sometimes people just buy the one that's the most expensive and think it's the most reliable, or the ones that's advertised the most. So I don't think sometimes they know that. But again, an EMF meter is not going to pick up a ghost. It could pick up an abnormality that you can't explain that could further lead you to the idea that there could be something paranormal going on. But yeah, it's when you really get into what EMFs do and what they measure and the differences between them, it can be mind-boggling.
So in
It
your
really can.
So in your opinion, as a professional, what would lead you to the conclusion that an actual paranormal event is taking place?
I think there's a lot of things. The witness, if it's a spontaneous case, it happens once. There's no suggestibility. In other words, if I go into a haunted place and I stay in the most haunted hotel room and I hear a noise, I think it's going to be a ghost. So, to me, witnesses that are reliable, it's spontaneous. It happens without cue. I don't think there's a physical thing that we could measure saying a ghost exists, but like EMFs or anything like that. So I think that the witness, the account, sometimes if another person witnesses it, that's another strong indicator that something could have happened. I'm more involved in the human dynamics of things than I am more in the technical ghost gadget type things as well right now. So I really think that those three things are the most important when it comes to verifying something paranormal could be going on.
So do you have any advice for someone who is interested in studying parapsychology?
Get out of the United States. That's my advice. There's really no programs in the United States that really take parapsychology seriously. There are a handful. I think University of West Virginia has some areas of that, but really overseas in the United Kingdom, there's a lot more opportunities to study parapsychology. It's a lot more accepted than it is here in the States. I think the States still considers it a pseudoscience. So it's more challenging here in the States. So I would really say get a strong degree, like in clinical counseling, psychology, something you can sort of rely on. And then when you have time, or if you have time, then you can pursue parapsychology. It sounds kind of pessimistic that I say that, but I don't make money off parapsychology. I make money off my other degrees, which is clinical.
You make money on your day job.
Yeah, I make money on my day job. Like I don't like this book. No, I'm not making money off this book. Yeah. I'm still, going over and studying parapsychology and psychological research method helped me in my other career, but I'm not, at a university teaching parapsychology here in the States. I'm doing more clinical work. So get a degree. That's something you can do. Psychology is a good degree. And then if you have time, then you go get your master's or PhD in parapsychology if you want to do that.
Where do you see the field of paranormal investigation or ghost hunting in the next 10 years, Brandon?
I think that with the advent of all these gadgets like our iPhones and the ability to sort of track how we are 24/7, because paranormal phenomenon happen outside the laboratory more than inside the laboratory.
Yep.
I think that if our technology gets to the point where we can actually measure our EEGs or EKGs or heart rates or whatever other biological indicators on a 24/7 basis, we might be able to actually record some important data that's going on not only in the environment but internally when someone has a ghostly encounter, and we can get more data like that, and then we can start seeing some correlations, and then who knows from there. I think consciousness, I think that's a big thing that's happening in the last 5 or so years. I think more mainstream scientists are open to the idea that consciousness may not be internal. It could be something that's external. It's the whole mind-body question.
Right.
And I think that avenue of science. So if consciousness is outside of our bodies or our minds, that opens the door to these paranormal things like telepathy, ESP, near-death experiences, ghost apparitions. So I like where that research is going. I was an ardent skeptic for a while, so I've moved a little bit towards the possibility of this happening and being genuine phenomenon. And I think with more information that's coming out, I think we can move a little bit closer to that. Will we have evidence of a ghost or whatever in 5-10 years? Most likely not. But consciousness is really where I think it's at. And I strongly believe in my book, I really emphasize consciousness and entanglement, non-locality. That's where the field is going.
So let me ask you, when it comes to ghosts, are you a skeptic or are you a believer?
I believe because I get that question all the time. Do ghosts exist? Do you believe in ghosts? And I think that, to me, the big question is, do I believe that people experience apparitions or ghostly phenomenon? Yes, I do.
Well, wait a sec. Wait a sec. Hold on. There are people who believe they see pink elephants with polka dots. Do you believe them?
That's right. So I'll get to my point. You nailed me on that one. So what I like to do is start with the person and the witness, and then I go from there. I do believe paranormal phenomenon exist, and I do believe it's something that's worth researching. Like I said before, I've never had a genuine paranormal experience or a ghostly encounter, but like we were talking about before, I've read the research. I know that there's a lot of good research and stats that say that ESP, psi, telepathy, there's a chance that this is going on. There's a high chance that this is going on.
Hey, listen, I will agree with you. I believe that that ESP is real. I believe that telepathy is real. I believe telekinesis is real. I believe there's a lot of power to the mind that we have yet to discover. But when it comes to ghosts or seeing grandma who's been dead for 20 years or 30 years or seeing the ghost of how come nobody ever sees a ghost of a Neanderthal or a dinosaur or anything way back from then, the early days? It's always, I think the earliest that I've heard a ghost being seen of is at Gettysburg.
Yeah, that's usually the most common one, that's for sure.
Hey, listen, Brandon, we've got to say so long for tonight. I want to thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on your book. And X-Zone Nation, if you'd like to get more information about Brandon Massullo, visit his website at hauntedtheories.com. That's www.hauntedtheories.com. The name of Brandon's book is The Ghost Studies, New Perspectives on the Origins of Paranormal Experiences. Well, talking about paranormal experiences, we have to take our break at the top of the hour. And when we come back, more from the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here in the X-Zone. After all, this is a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. But that doesn't mean I'm going to believe everything they tell me. And that doesn't mean I'm not going to question them. And as you've seen in the past, that doesn't mean the guest comes back after a commercial break. We'll be back, X-Zone Nation. This is the X-Zone. Rob McConnell. Visit us at xzbn.net.